It still caused quite an uproar after failing to reach a negotiated agreement with 130,000 teachers. Ontario has moved to impose a contract on them. The teachers' union is calling this move a disgraceful misuse of government power. CTV's Mirella Fernandez joins us now with more. So, Mirella, Ontario is using Bill 115, which has been, hugely controversial.
Yeah, they passed this particular law, Bill 115, as it's known, for this reason. They knew they were going to have problems. They started negotiating with teachers last year around February, and so by September they passed 115. What has happened here is 115 allows them to impose this contract on any teachers who don't have a contract yet in place through negotiations. So what we're talking about are the public school teachers, both elementary and high school. There's 130,000 of them that are going to have a contract now imposed on them. Bill 115 is also referred to as Putting Students First Act. That's what the Ontario government calls it. And here is the minister talking about why they're going to use this law, and then, Amanda, they're going to repeal it. Take a listen.
So given that the Putting Students First Act was only ever intended as a one-time measure by this government, it is important as a sign of good faith and our commitment to future negotiations that the act be repealed. Following the ratification period for CUPE and before the end of the month, I will move to repeal the act because I am convinced that it's an important step to find a way forward with our teachers.
So, Amanda, as you said, no big surprise that they dropped the hammer and said, we're enacting Bill, well, we're going to use Bill 115 and make you accept the contract. But a bit of a surprise that they said, and after that, we're done with Bill 115. It's gone by the wayside.
Because we're talking about two unions here, because other teachers were able to negotiate an agreement.
Yeah, that's right. The Education Ministry, there are about more than 200,000 workers employed within Ontario, but that includes teachers, other education workers, support staff. So 130,000 of them, as I mentioned, are going to have this imposed. But the Catholic school teachers, for example, elementary, high school, already negotiated a deal a couple of months ago. And so the framework for that deal is likely going to be imposed on the public teachers who didn't negotiate a deal.
I remember talking to you. You were live at a protest in downtown, somewhere in Toronto, where teachers were protesting. I mean, how is the union going to respond? Are we going to see more protests? Could they? I mean,
that's what we're not sure of. They did these one-day rotating strikes, they called them, which, by the way, in Bill 115, if the Ontario government wanted to step in and say, okay, that's the end of that, the Ontario government said, okay, you can do a one-day strike because they're in a legal position to do it, but after that, we're going to step in. So they had these one-day rotating strikes at boards across Ontario. Are they going to now walk out? It would be illegal for them to do that because now they have a contract in place, like it or not, but they're talking about protests instead of strikes. So what does that mean? Does it mean on a PA day they're going to do a protest? Does it mean it's going to affect kids in the classroom? So far, we're not really sure. It looks like kids would be back to class on Monday without a problem. The unions haven't told us exactly how they're going to follow up and express their dissatisfaction. One thing is likely, though, Amanda, those extracurricular activities, clubs, sports, which teachers do on their own time, they don't get paid to do it, it's likely that will continue to be affected this year.
CTV's Mirella Fernandez. Thanks so much, Mirella.
Thank you.
And for reaction now, we go to Sherry DeNovo. She is an MPP with the Ontario NDP, and she's been following this issue closely and speaking to it on behalf of her party. So, Sherry, what do you say to those who argue Laurel Broden, the Education Minister in Ontario, had no choice but to use the powers under Bill 115?
Well, what we in fact saw, Amanda, today was incredible cynical politics at play, put into play by a Liberal government that just didn't have an exit strategy on this. You cannot impose an agreement. You come to an agreement. We voted against Bill 115. We were always in favor of repealing it, but you can't invoke the bill and then repeal it. That says a lot about hypocrisy and about your politics. This whole episode today smacked more of the back room than it did of the classroom.
You know, I'm curious, actually. Have you ever seen something like that before? Saying, the government saying, we're going to use this bill, and then once we've used it, actually, we're going to repeal it.
Well, surprisingly enough, it's become a hallmark of this government, I think. I suppose not surprising. This is a government, for example, that cancelled a couple of power plants just to win some seats, was going to build them, then wasn't going to build them. That cost taxpayers and will cost taxpayers almost $1 billion. So here we see this about-face again with liberal political self-interest as its motivator, not what's good for students and not what's good for parents.
And we were just talking to Morella Fernandez about this idea that they might be protesting. What are you hearing from union leaders? Should Ontario parents expect an illegal strike?
Well, I haven't spoken to union leaders, but what I'm hearing from teachers in my riding and across the province is that they see this for what it is, a political gambit, a cynical ploy, a way of trying to appease them at the same time stabbing them in the back. Again, this was not a negotiated agreement, and they knew, I mean, the Liberals knew that Bill 115 wouldn't stand up to a charter challenge, that it went against the Labour Relations Board and against human rights, the Ontario Human Rights Act in Ontario. They knew it wouldn't stand up, but they still wanted to invoke it anyway. Nobody is fooled by this, certainly not teachers, certainly not parents, and certainly not the students who demonstrated in favor of their teachers.
Monday kids are back to school. Realistically, what do you think will happen from now until then?
It's hard to say, but certainly peace in our schools is not what the Liberal government had in mind when they began this whole process back with the invocation of Bill 115. Certainly it was not, a smooth transition into the school year. That was not what they had in mind with today's press conference, and I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, what they get is the chaos that they themselves brought on.
Ms. DeNovo, we're a national show. I'm curious why you think people across the country should be paying attention to this issue.
Well, I think it has ramifications. Bill 115 took away the right to strike. It took away the right to collectively bargain. This, of course, has overtones, as we know, internationally. We saw what happened in Michigan. This has very severe overtones for negotiation across Canada, and hopefully will not become the template for other negotiations.
Now, we know that the teachers believe 115 is unconstitutional, Bill 115. So, do you know what's legally happening regarding that bill right now?
Well, I can tell you that in 2007, the Supreme Court ruled on this very issue with BC health workers, and they ruled in favor of the workers. They said that, in fact, you cannot impose this kind of legislation and still consider it to be charter worthy. So we've had that precedent set, and that's the Supreme Court. So I think the Liberals saw the writing on the wall here, but they, wanted their cake and eat it too. And quite frankly, they picked a fight that needn't have been picked in the first place. Teachers already offered, they came to the negotiating table offering a 0% increase, and yet this government really just wanted to fight with them. Why, one can ask, and I think the answer is to try to win a by-election in Kitchener-Waterloo. That didn't work out so well, and again, no exit strategy on behalf of the Liberal government here.
You say this is cynical politics. Why? What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. Well, you invoke a law and use it, and then drop it like a hot potato as soon as you get some flack from those who it mandates. I mean, again, they're doing what suits the Liberal Party, and this is what we've seen with this Liberal government from the get-go. So nothing's changed there, and now they have the teachers in their targets, and teachers get it. I've been out with my teachers in my riding on Monday mornings picketing, and I can tell you that, adults, parents, students do not blame the teachers. They blame the government for picking a fight that never needed to have happened. This government, in fact, stepped in the way also of our school boards, who are the employers, didn't allow those negotiations to go forward. That's an elected body. So they've overridden democracy there, and of course we know they prorogued government. So this is not a party and a government that really is particularly democratic in that regard. So, riding roughshod over elected bodies like the public school boards, riding roughshod over democratic rights that the Supreme Court has upheld, this is this government's trademark.
Sherry DeNovo, an MPP with the Ontario NDP. Thank you, Ms. DeNovo, for your time. Appreciate it.